Greetings and welcome to another impressions video here at Words About Games, and today we're going to be looking at Maneater. Maneater is a third-person open-world RPG where players take on the role of a young bull shark. The shark embarks on a journey of revenge against Scaly Pete, a shark hunter and subject of a Deadliest Catch-style reality show who caught and murdered her mother and disfigured her, so he could recognise her the next time they met. Players need to explore and survive the various regions of Fatwick Bayou and beyond. There's a quote from one of my favourite movies that's incredibly appropriate at describing Maneater. All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks, and that's all. Once you take out the last part of the quote, Maneater is definitely not that kind of RPG. You've pretty much drilled into the core of the game. This is a decent sized RPG in which you do two things: swim and eat. How much you get out of that will depend on two things: how much you enjoy the game's core gameplay mechanics, and how long it is before the novelty of playing a killer shark wears off. Your mileage will definitely vary on both points. At first the game was fun as I tore through its waters, living out a power fantasy set against a witty, tongue-in-cheek backdrop. Unfortunately for me, the novelty didn't last too long. Most of my frustration comes down to the game's controls. Navigation is fairly easy. You swim through the game's various biomes, consuming smaller aquatic life for health, nutrients that you use to evolve, XP, and sometimes just for fun. Maneater keeps your moveset fairly limited and simplistic, which is to the game's benefit. Aside from your basic attack and the ability to swim faster, you've only got a smattering of other abilities: dodge, tail whip, and jump. Keeping things simple while you're moving through a three-dimensional space is always appreciated. It was once the game moved into combat that it started to lose me. As the titular man-eating killing machine, you're going to find yourself in combat fairly regularly, both against other hostile marine life and the humans that hunt you. The trouble is that the combat mechanics are incredibly sloppy, which might not have been too big a deal, except to be successful against some of the more challenging encounters the game demands a level of precision that it simply can't offer. The camera is probably the wonkiest part of the experience. It's quite difficult to keep track of whatever you're fighting, particularly underwater, where the various creatures you'll tussle with have just as much mobility as you do, if not more. What Maneater expects from you when it comes to fighting larger, more deadly creatures is for you to watch your enemy, dodge their attacks, and strike when you see an opening. And sometimes I could make that work. Most of the time, however, underwater combat was a messy affair. Because these fights essentially boil down to two large creatures charging at and biting each other, you'll constantly be swimming past each other. There's no lock-on. You can click the right stick to point the camera at an enemy, but it can be incredibly disorienting for the camera to suddenly swing around, and if there's more than one opponent around you, you've got no control over what the camera will point at. And if you lose track of where you are, which is easy when you're focused on trying to dodge and attack a deadly enemy, you'll probably surface. It was one of the big problems that caused me to take a ton of damage. Once you hit the surface of the water, you've got to push a button to submerge yourself and then swim downwards to avoid simply skimming the water again. All of which makes fighting a frustrating experience, but not as frustrating as fighting bounty hunters. Every time you attack humans, whether they're enjoying some time out on a boat or chilling on a beach, your threat meter will rise. Once it hits a certain threshold, boats of shark hunters will turn up to hunt you down. Kill enough of them, and a bounty hunter will turn up, a mini-boss of sorts with their own cutscene and big reward if you manage to kill them. Fighting the various bounty hunters in their boats could have been a really fun experience, swinging around to confuse them, lose their attention, and then bursting out of the water to scoop them off the deck of their boats. It's a shame that every single shark hunter in the Fatwick Bayou area is a special ops trained marksman, which is the only explanation I have for how accurate they are when they're shooting at you. They literally never miss, unless you time a dodge perfectly, and even then, it's inconsistent whether you'll actually dodge their attack or still take some damage. Once two or more bots turn up, which is frequent once you've raised your threat by a couple of levels, it becomes near impossible to mount an offensive. There are just too many guns being aimed at you with too much precision. Each time I try to swim up and damage a boat or take out one of its occupants, I'd either have to try to tank some damage or withdraw to avoid being shot to ribbons. It's a shame because there are parts of this game that are kinda cool. A lot of work has clearly been put into the world you're swimming through. Each of the different areas feels really different from the last. Each has its own personality, landmarks, and different predators that make them all feel quite distinct. Though this is a very traditional open-world experience, there are collectibles to find and hidden caches of nutrients to locate and bust open, and a mountain of quests and side quests to keep you occupied. There's a main narrative in Maneater as you look for revenge against Scaly Pete, which you progress by completing some fairly uninspired quests. Most of them just point you to a specific area to kill X amount of humans or other aquatic life, or to find some of the game's collectibles, or hunt down specific predators, or even deadlier apex predators, the latter of which can be frustrating as the game has a habit of forcing you to fight enemies of a much higher level than you are to make progress. Leveling up is also fairly standard for an open world RPG. You gain XP for kills and completing quests, which progresses your level and your shark's maturity, from a pup all the way up to a megalodon. You can also equip special evolutions that you find by finding collectibles or killing bounty hunters which can augment your abilities, such as improved sonar detection or electrified teeth, which you can upgrade via the nutrients you collect through caches or eating everything in sight. In the end though, it all comes back to the Jaws quote. You do two things in Maneater. You swim and you eat. There's not a great deal of variety to the game, which isn't necessarily a negative on its own. Sometimes it's good for a game to be focused. Unfortunately, the combat feels too messy and frustrating, and the quests the game sends you on are just a bit too dull. Maneater is a great idea, and it does have its moments thanks to its diverse areas and excellently dry narration, but there's not enough meat on the bone to keep me playing through the parts that frustrated me. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, consider sticking around here at Words About Games. Our content includes review impressions of games big and small, a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing the happenings in and around the games industry, weekly opinion videos, reactions, debate-driven top 5 and top 10 lists, a regular Hall of Fame series where we discuss our favourite games, and indie game spotlights. We also stream every Friday and Saturday at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames. Most importantly, have a brilliant day.